when I went to law school, I felt completely out of place. Or I remember early on in law school, I felt overwhelmed, and there was some doubt that crept in, and it seemed like everybody that I was in class with knew things that I just seemed foreign to me, and it was like a foreign language, and other people seemed to already know the language, and it was intimidating. And back then there weren't cell phones back then, so you'd call home on like a Sunday night, and you'd have to call in the evening so you got the right rates, long distance rates. And I think my family was like a lot of families back then. You did the overwhelming majority of your conversation on the phone. You talked to your mom, and then at the end of the conversation, she'd say, "Hey, you want to talk to Dad?" My dad get on and say, "Hey, how's everything going? You need any money? Everything good? All right, great. See you next week." That kind of stuff.
Just the
What a long
thumbs up.
conversation with my dad.
Yeah.
And my dad, one time I called home and probably had a rough week or rough month in law school. And my dad's like, "Hey, how's everything going?" I said, I'm struggling. It sucks." And what? Yeah, what? I said, I don't, I feel lost in these classes. Like everybody, their dad's a lawyer or mom's a lawyer. They seem to know all this stuff, and I'm like, I'm lost. And he kind of laughed at me and said, he said, "Geez, you sound like your mother and her friends when you guys were toddlers." And I'm like, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, they were talking about, well, little Johnny can walk at age 1, or this guy can, this one can talk at 6 months." He goes, "Who cares? They can all talk when they're 3." And he said, "You don't get a prize for knowing it now. You get a diploma for knowing it at the end." And his thing was like, "So you're the one that can't do it. We finally found one that just can't do it. Like all the rest of them can do it, but not you." And it kind of snapped me out of my little pity party. And I was like, "Yeah, okay. You're right. Just keep plugging and I'll get there. I don't have to know it now. I have to know it later." And it was helpful.